The applause started before the men had even reached the elevator. People stood around the glass conference room laughing, smiling, and raising champagne glasses as if they had just won something important. Across the office, a single father named Elliot Mercer walked toward the exit carrying a cardboard box filled with everything he had left at his desk: a small plant his daughter had grown from a seed, a framed photograph, a coffee mug, and a worn notebook full of ideas nobody had bothered to read. Behind him, the woman who had fired him lifted her glass and laughed louder than anyone. But 3 minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and the company's owner stepped into the office. He looked around at the celebration, confused by the champagne, the laughter, and the empty desk near the window. Then he asked a question that made the entire room go silent. "Where is Elliot?" Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and never judging someone before knowing what they are carrying, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to Kindness Tallis 2.0. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. You never know how far a simple story can travel. Elliot had worked at Halden & Rowe Consulting for almost 7 years. He was never the loudest person in the room, never the one who stayed behind at expensive dinners with executives, and never the employee who fought to be noticed. He simply showed up, did his work, and went home to his 8-year-old daughter, Nora. Since losing his wife several years earlier, Elliot had learned to measure life differently. Success was no longer about promotions or impressive titles. Success was getting Nora to school on time, keeping food in the refrigerator, paying the electricity bill, and making sure she never felt the emptiness of losing her mother alone. At the office, however, nobody knew most of that. They only saw a tired man who sometimes arrived with dark circles beneath his eyes. They noticed that he occasionally left exactly at 5:30. They whispered that he was not ambitious anymore. They assumed his attention was divided. The person who believed those things most strongly was Sabrina Vale, the company's ambitious operations director. Sabrina had recently been given control over the department, and she wanted everything to look perfect. She wanted younger employees who could work late, travel without notice, and attend every networking event. Elliot did not fit the image she was building. She considered his quiet nature a weakness and his family responsibilities an inconvenience. One Monday morning, Sabrina called Elliot into her office and told him his performance was no longer meeting expectations. Elliot knew it wasn't true. His numbers were among the strongest in the department. He had solved problems that senior managers had failed to solve. But Sabrina had already made up her mind. She placed a termination letter on the desk. Elliot stared at it for several seconds. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply asked if he could collect his things. Sabrina smiled as though she had won a battle. She told him not to make a scene and reminded him that business was business. Elliot nodded quietly, signed the paperwork, and walked back to his desk. His hands shook as he placed his daughter's little plant into the cardboard box. He looked at the framed photograph of Nora standing beside him at a school science fair. In the picture, she was missing one front tooth and smiling so proudly that Elliot had kept the photograph beside his monitor for years. He carefully packed it away. Then he picked up his box and walked toward the elevator. That was when Sabrina decided to celebrate. She ordered champagne for the department, joking that the office was finally moving forward. A few employees laughed because they were afraid not to. Others joined in because they wanted Sabrina's approval. Someone clapped. Someone raised a glass. Sabrina looked toward the elevator and laughed as Elliot disappeared. What none of them knew was that Elliot had less than $200 in his bank account. His mortgage payment was due in 9 days. Nora needed new shoes for school. And that evening, he had to sit across from his daughter and somehow explain why the life they had carefully built together had suddenly become uncertain. When Elliot arrived home, Nora ran toward him expecting the usual hug. But the cardboard box in his hands made her stop. She looked at his face. Children notice things adults try to hide. Elliot knelt down and told her that Daddy had lost his job. Nora's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry immediately. Instead, she reached into his box and pulled out the little plant she had helped him grow. She hugged it against her chest and said that they could take care of it together. That night, after Nora fell asleep, Elliot sat at the kitchen table staring at his laptop. He sent applications to 11 companies. By midnight, he had received 3 automated rejection emails. By 2 in the morning, he was still awake. The next few days became a blur of interviews, rejection letters, cheap coffee, and quiet calculations at the grocery store. Elliot stopped buying things for himself. He skipped meals when Nora wasn't looking. He sold an old watch he had inherited from his father. Elliot answered after several rings, assuming it was another recruiter. When he heard Grant's voice, he became silent. Grant apologized. Not a corporate apology. Not a carefully worded statement written by lawyers. A real apology. He told Elliot that the company had made a serious mistake and asked if he would come back. Elliot looked across the kitchen at Nora's little plant sitting on the windowsill. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he explained that he wasn't sure he could trust the company anymore. Grant understood. He didn't pressure him. Instead, he offered Elliot something no one had offered before: control over his own future. Grant said he wanted Elliot to return as a senior project manager, with authority over his schedule, a salary increase, and the freedom to work remotely when his daughter needed him. But Elliot still hesitated. He remembered the laughter. He remembered carrying that box through the office while people celebrated his failure. Then Grant said something that changed everything. He told Elliot that a company was not truly successful if it had to destroy good people to appear successful. The next morning, Elliot returned to the office. The same elevator opened. The same hallway waited. But this time, nobody laughed. Sabrina stood near the conference room, pale and silent. Grant was waiting beside Elliot's old desk. On top of it was the framed photograph of Nora. Grant had personally retrieved it from the box Elliot had left behind. Elliot picked it up. For the first time in days, his shoulders relaxed. He accepted the position, but he made one request. He wanted the company to create a policy allowing employees with family responsibilities to be treated with the same respect as everyone else. Grant agreed. Sabrina was removed from her position after an internal review revealed that she had ignored performance records and dismissed employees based on personal assumptions. The company also apologized to Elliot publicly. But the most powerful moment came weeks later. Nora visited the office after school. She walked beside her father through the lobby holding the little plant they had kept alive together. Employees smiled at her. One of them told her that her dad was one of the best people in the company. Nora looked up at Elliot and smiled. "See, Daddy. I told you the plant would grow." Elliot laughed softly. He looked at the tiny green leaves and realized something. The plant had survived because someone had kept watering it even when it looked like nothing was happening. Maybe people were the same. Sometimes, the world looked at someone struggling and assumed they were failing. Sometimes, a tired face was mistaken for weakness. Sometimes, someone was quietly fighting battles nobody could see. And sometimes, all a person needed was one opportunity, one person willing to ask the right question, and one second chance. If Elliot's story touched your heart, please don't just watch and leave. Like this video, share it with someone who may be going through a difficult season, and subscribe to Kindness Tallis 2.0 for more stories about kindness, hope, and second chances. And before we reach the ending, I want to ask you something special. Comment, "Second chances matter," if you believe people deserve another opportunity when they are trying their best. Because Elliot never needed someone to feel sorry for him. He needed someone to see him. And sometimes, the person everyone else is willing to throw away is the very person a company, a family, or even a community cannot afford to lose. That day, Elliot walked out of the office carrying a box. He returned carrying something much more valuable. His dignity. His daughter's little plant was still growing. And so was he.